Williston's just a tremendous community, good people, support our businesses, support, from the fundraising we do to anything else, the businesses that we open. What is there not to love?
Recorded live from the heart of the Morgen, it's the Williston Works Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Williston Works Podcast, brought to you by the City of Williston. I'm your host, Anna Nelson, Executive Director of Williston Economic Development. Now, whether you're a first-time listener or a longtime fan, we're thrilled to bring you inspiring stories and in-depth conversations with the entrepreneurs, small business owners, and investors who are shaping Williston, North Dakota. Today, we're excited to focus on investment and growth in Williston, specifically highlighting a thriving restaurant business and their involvement with Williston Square. So joining me today is Mike Sartwell. He is President and CEO of Preferred Restaurant Group, and Morgen Martelle, Chief Operating Officer at Preferred Restaurant Group. The Preferred Restaurant Group operates the popular Taco John's and Slim Chickens franchises right here in Williston, as well as 16 other restaurants across 4 states. Mike and Morgen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Anna.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We're happy to learn more about you and everything that you bring to Williston. So, Mike, let's start with you. Can you tell us just a little bit about your background and your journey into the restaurant industry?
Sure. I'll try to put it in a nutshell because it stretches a few years now. I'm going to date myself. I'm into my 50th year this year. So I started when I was 16 years old at Taco John's in Minot. I worked at Taco John's when it was just a little 12 by 30 taco stand, and did that in high school. And when I went to college in Fargo, I started managing my first Taco John's at 18. I eventually transferred back to Minot, and there were 3 partners that actually owned the Taco John's in Minot out of South Dakota. And when one of those guys decided to retire, that was my opportunity to first buy in to Taco John's. And then over the years, I eventually bought the other 2 partners out and owned the Taco John's. And I always wanted to grow the brand. It was a great brand for us, and been involved in a lot of things in Western North Dakota for so many years. Of course, I wanted to be involved in other parts of Western North Dakota. So I talked to the operator that was in Williston in about 2004, I think it was 2004, 2005. And, she gave me the opportunity to buy her restaurants in Williston and Dickinson. So, we bought the restaurants there about then. And we had the old store that was located right next to KFC. And, when I bought it, the intention was to try to find another piece of property in Williston and build a new store. So, we did that, I think, within the first couple of years of buying Williston. That's when we moved to the current location. And if anybody remembers, we actually opened up with a co-brand. It was a Taco John's Good Times Burgers. And that really didn't work. The Good Times part of that didn't really work out for us just because it was so complicated. It was just such a complicated operation that we did that for maybe a year. I think it was maybe a little bit less than a year. And we took the Good Times out and we just straight to Taco John's. And it was a great move for us because the people in Williston just have supported us so well over the years that we actually took Good Times out and we didn't lose any sales. It just made it easier to operate Taco John's and just run that one brand. But, over the years, actually, I've been involved with about 36 restaurants. Over time, I bought a few more. We had 24 Taco John's at any given time over 6 different states. During the time that we were growing with Taco John's, I kind of dabbled in some other businesses too, including Subway and Schlotzsky's Deli. I had Godfather's Pizza and a couple of other brands. And then actually, about 3 years ago, I thought I'd start to wind down. And I sold a whole bunch of restaurants. I need to update some of our information because you said we have 16 Taco John's in different states, but we don't anymore. I actually sold a whole bunch and kept the ones that are, closest to our heart and closest to our hometown. And we kept Minot, Williston, and Dickinson. Those are the 3 Taco John's restaurants that we own now. And we have 4 slim chickens. And about the time I thought I was winding down, my son-in-law, Morgen, Martelle, who's our chief operating officer today, joined the company. So he and my daughter, and actually my son, joined. He's a marketing guy, and he started taking care of the marketing. So my kids joined the company, and they basically said that, I have some work to do yet, and I can't wind down just yet. And they convinced me to open up our own brand. We had a building in Minot, empty restaurant in Minot, and they convinced me that we could do our own brand, and they wanted me to design a restaurant featuring all the food that I've cooked for them over all these years. So we opened up a new brand called Rocky's Burgers, Franks, and Fries in Minot last November. And it's just going extremely well right now. We're pretty happy about that. We're looking at another location on the eastern part of the state, and we're actually looking for an opportunity in Williston. We love doing business in Williston, and we love the community, and it's always been so good to us that it only makes sense for us to do another one. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I guess. So
yeah, you've got such a cool story to tell, such a cool background, and just a wealth of knowledge in this industry. And I think Williston is lucky to have you and your company and your investment, and now to be sharing it with your kids and your family. Like that's cool. Like that's the next generation coming in. Now I have to ask, it's Rocky's. Did that come full circle? Is that in the same building where you started?
Well, it's not quite. The
Okay.
building that I started in mine is still up, but we relocated from that site. That was originally a 12 by 30 taco stand there too. We went about a block down the street and opened up a brand new Taco John's. Actually, we did it during the oil boom. Thought it was a good move, and it probably wasn't the right thing to do, right? So, and we had a second restaurant in Minot, and actually Minot at about 50,000 people is really kind of a good solid one store Taco John's market, and so we chose to keep the Taco John's on South Broadway open, and it's a high volume restaurant for us. So we actually had this empty building. I actually had on the market to lease because, like I said, I was winding down. But the kids convinced me that we needed to do something with it. So that's how Rocky's came to pass.
Well, that's very cool. And I mean, you're talking to the right people here for bringing that to Williston. So we'll talk about that, definitely. Now let's learn more about Morgen. So like you said, Morgen, you're Mike's son-in-law and the chief operating officer. So can you share with us a little bit about your background and how you came to be part of the business?
Yeah, so my background didn't necessarily start in the business world. I was a pediatric ICU nurse for 5 years. After I got done playing hockey at Minot State, and moved to Minnesota with McKenna, and I was there. Worked for Fairview for 5 years, like I said, and I've always, ever since coming into the family, I've always been interested in the business, right? Anything that Mike talks about, we would sit and talk. I wasn't involved in it, but I would sit and listen to him talk about what he was doing and different things and how the restaurants are doing, just because it interested me. And, I always had this idea of maybe that could be something someday. And then it really, the big interest started, back in 2018. We actually ended up going to a Taco John's convention as a family, and I sat in every single Taco John's meeting that there was during the convention with Mike, and just sat there and soaked it in and listened to what people were saying. And it was like, it always thought that, this is actually really cool, and obviously Mike has created something amazing, and it would really be cool to be a part of it. And then fast forward to April of 2023, I made the jump from the healthcare field, and started learning from Mike. There's so much knowledge, and like he said, his 50 years of doing it, there's really no better teacher. You can go to school for some of these things, but the real world, how things happen and why we do things a certain way, is the best way to learn. So I've been with the company for 2 years now, actually 2 years this month. So I've loved every second of it. I've learned a lot, and learned pretty fast. maybe even faster than we kind of thought I would be learning, but just how the day-to-day goes. And it's been amazing.
Yeah, there's something to be said for hands-on learning, right?
Yeah.
Like you just get thrown into it, especially like you said, working with the best. That really is a great way to learn. I'm a big fan of that. So, and also congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Yes. Hi, thanks.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, Morgan. Thanks.
Yeah.
He's taken a lot of the load. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's got to be helpful, having another set of hands, and it sounds like someone who learns quickly. So
absolutely, yes,
that's got to be such a blessing.
Yeah, and like Mike said, he was winding down, and all of a sudden I come in, and Billy, probably 6 months to a year after me, we just started poking him, going, "Oh, we know there's more creativity in you. I know you wanna. Let's do it." And hopefully Rockies is on to bigger and better things. It's doing great in Minot, and we're ready to, show the rest of North Dakota what Mike's recipes are all about.
So it's good to have family around you. Keep you going, right, Mike?
Yeah. Keeps you young.
Well,
yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So we've kind of talked through the history of Taco John's in Williston. So, Mike, what factors do you consider when evaluating new business opportunities and locations, especially like we've talked about in Williston, where it's unique and rapidly growing?
Looking outside of Western North Dakota, because, we've had businesses there. I bought existing businesses with Taco John's. I kind of saw the business that was going on. When I've done other markets, kind of the standard things, market size, the trade area demographics, traffic counts, future viability, just a lot of those kinds of things that you really kind of analyze and take a look at. But when it comes to communities in Western North Dakota, and certainly communities like Williston, there really are some, intangibles that are in place that causes you not to doubt, if you will, right, on some of the moves that you're going to make. When we decided to go in with Slim Chickens and Williston Square, obviously the traffic wasn't there. But we know the community, and we know how progressive Williston is, and we embraced and we saw the vision for Williston Square. So there really wasn't much hesitation on our part at all. About going out there. We were the first business, I believe, to open in Williston Square. With that comes some risk. We actually had the biggest opening of the brand's history when we opened Williston. So, that was truly, kind of Williston's fashion. They've always supported us, and that was the case with Slim's. It was just a huge opening. It's taken just a little bit longer, I think, maybe for things to start developing and happening out in Williston Square. But, we're really excited about, the things are really starting to happen, right? I think people are going to be breaking ground this spring. I think the new interchange is being built this spring. And so I think some of the things that, we invested in the future there, we knew it, and it's starting to materialize. So we're just really excited, about those kinds of things. And again, when a community like Williston, and I think you've heard me tell this story before, but our companies have always believed in giving back to the communities, and we try to do it in big ways. And for example, with Taco John's in Williston, we do fundraisers, and it's actually some Slim Chickens too, but we do fundraisers at Taco John's on Thursday nights, and fundraisers at Slim Chickens on Tuesday nights, where organizations can come in from 5 to 7. We don't give 10 or 15% of our proceeds to organizations, but we commit 50% of any dollars that they generate during these fundraisers back to the community. Honestly, Williston has had some of the biggest fundraisers in our company's history. It's been tremendous. Another thing, when my daughter, Morgan's wife, was born, she was born with cystic fibrosis, and Taco John's had a thing called Nachos Navidad that they had just started. It had been in place for a year, and we asked other franchisees across the state if they would join us in committing a portion of the Nachos Navidad sales to support the Cystic Fibrosis Association of North Dakota to help others that were afflicted with CF. And so, fellow franchisees joined in. We do a fundraiser every year. I think as most people know, we've been doing it for 11 years. 20. How many years is it?
I'm gonna let you know. She's
help
27.
me out.
27.
27. 27 years, and I think we raised about $600,000 over the years. And what's crazy is Williston has consistently every single year raised the most money. These are the intangibles that I kind of talk about. Williston's just a tremendous community of good people, support our businesses, support, from the fundraising we do to anything else, the businesses that we open. What is there not to love, right? This is why we don't even hesitate, and this is why we have this brand new brand that we've just developed, and Williston is one of the first places we want to go.
Well, we appreciate that, and I'm glad that is recognized, because living here, I see the community rally, I see the community come out for causes, but to see that from your end, from the outside looking in, and now see the investment that you have here, it's cool to hear. And thank you for sharing that story about your daughter and what you're able to do, and it's really neat to hear that. I mean, the state came out for that and rallied around that cause. So that's a really neat story. Morgen, what about your perspective? What are you seeing, having joined the company, as far as what you're looking for in new investments?
Yeah, I don't have necessarily as big of a map like Mike does, right? In the fact that he's been doing it for 50 years, I've only been doing it for 2 years. But traffic is a big thing. Where Williston Square is going to be, bringing in residential, retail, some health and wellness and some entertainment things into Williston Square, that's going to drive traffic to Williston Square, right? And you bring that in with what Mike just talked about with the community, it's a no-brainer, right? The community gets behind everything that you do. It doesn't matter what it is. One of our most exciting days for Taco John's is Williston Band Day. We fill our Taco John's for Band Day because we know that it's going to be busy. We have some people that aren't working that are passing out coupons for people to come in because Band Day is such a big thing in Williston. And there's so many other things, we could be going for 2 hours for things that Williston puts on and the community gets behind each other. And I would say just the intangibles, like Mike said, you can't understate what that brings to a situation.
Yeah, community involvement.
Yes.
It's huge. And yeah, like you've both touched on, Williston Square is, we're so grateful to have you and Genesis there kind of as our first movers. Yeah, we're working hard on that development. And we're
Thank
excited.
you. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited for, future announcements, and yeah, there's going to be some groundbreakings, and I think that redirect project for Highway 2, that will really help, direct a little bit more traffic that direction. And yeah, we're definitely on the right track there. So thank you for believing in it, believing in us. And we're excited to keep filling that up.
Yeah, and the proof's in the pudding. Mike talked about Slim's a little bit, but if you look at Taco John's has been the highest Taco John's in sales 11 out of the last 15 years. So if anybody's sitting here wondering, can Williston bring the sales? Well, it has. 11 out of the last 15 years, we've been the strongest Taco John's in the chain.
Just a little applause for that. Really.
Thank you, Williston.
Yeah, thanks, Williston.
No, we appreciate the support. We love supporting the community, and we sure appreciate the love that the Williston community gives back.
Yeah, and thank you for giving back to the community as well. When I first met you, Mike, I was working with the chamber, and so we were really excited to not only be a part of the Slim Chickens grand opening, but also to work with you on several other of our events. You guys were huge supporters of things like teacher appreciation and things like that. So it's goes both ways, right? Like the support kind of has to go both ways. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you.
So we've been talking a lot about giving back and community engagement. Now, there's something called Roundup with Rockies. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
You bet. And by the way, I'll just talk about the name just a little bit. People wonder where we came up with Rockies, and that's actually my childhood nickname that my dad gave to me, and I couldn't shake it all through high school. But I had it all the way through high school, started using it when I started managing restaurants and getting in business. And then when it came to naming this restaurant, my son said, we need to call it Rockies because this is your food, this is your menu. And I wasn't for it at first, but they convinced me to do it. So that's where the name came from. But yeah, Roundup with Rockies, one of the things that we really wanted to do with this brand, we've always been about, getting behind our communities and giving back. And we really wanted to do it in a big way with Rockies. So we turned up the notch a couple of notches here. And what we do there is we actually go out and we find a charitable partner each quarter that we want to support them in their mission. And we ask our guests for the entire quarter if they'd like to round up with Rockies for that cause. And anytime they round up, we match it penny for penny. So when we opened up in November, the first charitable partner was the Lord's Cupboard Food Pantry in Minot. In the first 6 weeks that we were in business, we were actually able to raise $9,500 for that food pantry. We just wrapped up our first quarter of this year for Day of Hope winter gear for kids. We wanted to support that program so that, kids that needed some winter gear could be safe and warm in the winter months. We just wrapped that one up. Actually did a check presentation this morning. It was just under $12,000 that we were able to raise in the first quarter of this year. And we just got into, we're supporting Companions for Children for the second quarter here. So we're just looking forward to giving back in a big way. And I'll tell you what, our customers are really stepping up. They're the ones that really make this happen. They've been so generous and good about rounding up. And like I said, and we match it. So it's been a great program. It's off to a great start, and we're just looking forward to giving back to different organizations that could use the help.
And how do those organizations get involved?
Right now, we've had some people calling us and seeing how they can get involved, but we've kind of made a list of people that we know that could use some help and support. And so we've just kind of been going through them and as a group and deciding which organizations we want to get behind at this time. So we just kind of evaluate it as we move forward.
Is that kind of the same for your franchises? Because you said you do some fundraisers with Taco John's and Slim Chickens as well.
A little bit different there. Primarily with those fundraisers, and by the way, we do it every single week. So there's lots of opportunity. That's not just a once a quarter thing. 52 times, there's 52 times a year where there's opportunities for organizations to have a fundraiser, either Taco John's or Slim Chickens. And the majority of those are things like, schools, different clubs, sporting clubs, churches, just a lot of those kinds of things. And there's a lot of room for many people to get involved. So we don't do as much picking and choosing. How's that?
So if there is an organization in Williston that wanted to get involved, do they contact the manager? Who do they get in contact with?
Any one of us. One of us will get back to us, and we've got our list. And again, every time we're looking at the next quarter, we're going to be taking a look at that list and taking a look at who we're going to support.
Wonderful. So this one's for you, Morgan. For other businesses and entrepreneurs considering investing in Williston, what advice or insights would you share?
Well, I guess I'm gonna be frank. Just do it. But that's really the way that I look at it. If anything that we haven't said so far doesn't get you going, I don't know what will. Williston is a great community. Like Mike said, it's a progressive community, and they've supported us really well. And we like to be, like we just talked about, give back to the community, even if it's not a fundraiser. I know we've sent, if you have a raffle, an auction, those kind of things. If you reach out to us, we send a basket, with some coupons or some chickens at Taco John swag, and hopefully some Rocky swag. You never know, but it's honestly just do it, because the community is going to rally around you.
What about you, Mike? What's your advice?
I think Morgan said it real well. I think we're taking somebody else's slogan here, aren't we? Just do it.
Yeah, maybe I probably should have used something else there.
Right, you can wear your Nikes while you're doing it.
Yeah, we don't hesitate. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure anybody else should either.
Right.
Love that philosophy. We've maybe teased it a little bit, but what's the future for Preferred Restaurant Group in Williston and beyond?
Well, Preferred Restaurant Group has the development rights to open Slim Chickens across the state. So, we plan to continue to grow with the Slim Chickens brand. We don't have those types of opportunities with Taco John's. There's franchisees in every community across the state right now. So, we're excited and to continue to operate our 3 restaurants in Minot, Williston, and Dickinson. And then, Rockies, like I said, we've had a very successful opening. Like Williston, Minot's just been a tremendous community for us, and the same type of thing. And they've really rallied behind Rockies and been big supporters. And it's just been a great, wonderful opening. And it's put us in a position where we can look at our next restaurant. So we've got one slated for the eastern side of the state, and we're just kind of looking at Williston right now. Like always, it's one of the first markets that we'd like to be a part of. And then we're just going to, if God willing, things keep going well, we hope to continue to open the brand across the state.
So what does that mean for you, Morgan? Onward and upward in the company?
He's going to be busy. He's going to be busy.
Yeah. I mean, it's the exciting part, right? When obviously there's day-to-day things that you work on, Monday through Friday, Monday through Monday, sometimes, and the exciting part is looking for land and looking for opportunity. So I'm excited.
Good. And we hope to help you find just that here for any future restaurants. So excited to continue working with you. Now, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you think is important for our listeners to know about you, about the group, about the markets that you work in?
Community is such a big thing, and we kind of talked about that the most, but I mean, it's one of our pillars. We're devoted to serving others, and that's our motto, and we're devoted to our communities, and we want to give back, because without the community giving to us, we can't give back.
So guys, for our listeners to find your restaurants, where do they go?
They can check out any one of our restaurants in any of the communities that we're involved in North Dakota, whether it's Taco John's, Minot, Williston, Dickinson, Slim Chickens in the state, or Rockies and Minot. They stop at the restaurants. They'll be able to get in contact with the right person. If you're looking for fundraisers for your organization, if you're looking for something for your fun nights or any of those kinds of stuff, you can certainly stop at the restaurant. Our support center is in Minot. Our phone number there is 701-838-3996. If you give us a call, just let us know what you're looking for. They'll put you in touch with the right people.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both again for joining me, for your investment in Williston, and we look forward to seeing what's next.
Thanks, Anna.
Yes, thank you very much.
Appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening to today's episode of the Williston Works podcast, brought to you by the City of Williston. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more insightful conversations. And to learn more about Williston Square and investment opportunities in Williston, visit willistondevelopment.com. We'll see you next time on the Williston Works podcast.